I knew the funeral had begun when the CFO called the pension freeze a minor adjustment. He said it like someone brushing off a blinking paper jam light. Not a word about the 31 years I'd spent building Halden systems from a storage unit in Reno into a tech powerhouse listed on NASDAQ. No phone call, just an email. One of those sterile HR auto messages that reads like a robot trying to imitate compassion. Due to shifting fiscal strategies, your pension benefits have been temporarily suspended pending cost recalibration. No greeting, no sign-off, not even a courtesy typo to make it feel human. I sat there in my apartment in Flagstaff, still in my old CSU sweatshirt toast, untouched, rereading the message like the words might change. Like maybe if I stared hard enough, it would blink into decency. But it didn't. It never does. And that was the moment sitting in my Arizona kitchen with the fridge humming like a tired ceiling fan that I realized they'd already held my memorial. Whispered their boardroom condolences, tossed in a budget-cut bouquet, moved on to please some venture capital jackals. And if you're listening and thinking, wow, that's cold, do me a kindness, hit that subscribe button. Yeah, I know most folks just hover quietly, but toss a like or a sub. It keeps the crew going when corporate rot like this makes you want to scream into your coffee cup. Anyway, back to the wreckage. This wasn't just a pension freeze. It was my pension. 3 decades of crises. Sunday calls, last-minute audits, acquisitions, and boardroom flameouts. I was the one they called when the servers caught fire. When our CTO forged expense reports. When the stock dipped 40% overnight and we had 48 hours to stop the bleeding. Never asked for credit. I was the framework holding everything in place. And now, just deleted. Like a formatting error, but they forgot something. After that email, I stood up, reached above the fridge for the dusty blue binder, labeled Founders Agreement, M. Raines. Inside, buried between old org charts and equity drafts, sat Clause 9F. And the clock just started ticking. Any material adverse change to the employee's compensation package shall trigger an immediate severance payout of $25 million USD payable within 72 business hours. At the time, we drafted it. The clause felt absurd. We weren't worth $25,000, let alone $25 million. But Bruce, my first company attorney, just grinned and said, Marla, one day Halden Systems is going to get big and stupid. When that happens, he added, you'll want a kill switch. I thought he was being theatrical. Turns out, he was just early. I reread Clause 9F slowly, like I was chanting something sacred. My finger traced the line where I'd initialed in blue pen just beneath the board chair's loopy signature. There was no ambiguity, no wiggle room. It was a grenade with a 72-hour fuse, and the idiots had just yanked the pin. I didn't cry, didn't yell. I didn't need to. I closed the binder, poured myself another cup of oolong, and opened Outlook. My email to Halden Legal was brief. No threats. No theatrics. Just the subject line, Clause 9F. Activated. I didn't expect applause, but I knew one thing: they no longer saw me as a person. Just a cost to cut. They forgot I was the scaffolding holding their empire together. They were about to remember. Legacy doesn't vanish just because you stop putting it in pitch decks. And some contracts, especially the ones written in long nights and spite, don't expire. Clause 9F wasn't just ink. It was a whisper from the foundation they stood on. I stared at it, printed in a clunky serif font on yellowing paper. Not legalese, not bloated, just clean surgical language. Any material adverse action to the undersigned's compensation shall trigger a severance payout of $25 million payable within 72 business hours. I actually laughed. The kind of laugh that bubbles up when the universe aligns just right. Bruce had been right. You're going to get screwed someday, he told me. Make sure they pay you for it. Turns out I did. And they will. I scanned the page, snapped a screenshot, and attached the notarized PDF, same one Bruce and I signed back in '96. Then I drafted a quick message to my attorney, Charles Rayner, still on retainer after all these years. Subject line, Clause 9F, just checking. That was it. Took 5 minutes. I hit send, shut the laptop, and went about my Tuesday. Watered the peace lily in the corner, cleaned out a dozen flagged emails, rewrote a client proposal that some overzealous project manager had stuffed full of buzzwords and branding cliches. Just another quiet morning, except this one had a nuclear clause tucked under my ceramic mug. Charles called 3 hours later. "Marla," he said, his voice low and amused, like gravel wrapped in velvet. "That clause is still fully active. No amendment, no override. And since you never signed over into the 2013 executive package, they're toast." I could hear his grin through the phone, that grin lawyers get when someone else's disaster lands on the billable clock. I didn't smile back. "Not yet." "Good to know," I said calmly. "Let's keep it quiet for now. I just wanted confirmation." He paused. "You want to send formal notice?" "Not yet," I said, sipping my now cold tea. "Let them take one more swing. Makes the paperwork taste better." He laughed. "You've always been the calmest grenade in the room." "Damn right I was." I hung up and opened a new folder on my desktop. Started organizing, board minutes, my original offer letter, old HR emails confirming my founder status, every tiny breadcrumb proving they never revoked a thing. This wasn't revenge, not some dramatic coup. Just a woman double-checking a lock she built 3 decades ago and finding out the bolt never rusted. Corporate amnesia is contagious. New execs come in high on buzzwords and forget who built the walls. They forgot I wasn't just part of Halden Systems. I was Halden Systems. So I drafted the message. Subject clause, 9F, activation. To the recent pension freeze, REF 457B. I hereby invoke Clause 9F of my Founders Agreement. Please confirm payout timeline and wire contact. MR, no exclamation points, no all caps, no threats. Just the kind of email that hums like static playing quiet and laced with high-voltage consequences. I hit send and watched it disappear into the same system that tried to erase me. Then, I took a long breath, finished my chamomile, and walked into the Tuesday strategy meeting like it was any other Tuesday. The room was packed with the regular cast. Tyler trying to pass off confidence as competence. Zoe pretending her rebrand deck hadn't been lifted straight from a consulting firm's boilerplate. And Brent, our ever-smirking CFO, clicking his pen like punctuation would save the quarter. I sat in my usual seat, didn't speak, didn't even open my laptop. I just watched. 20 minutes and my phone buzzed. Brent CB Collins, HaldenSys.com. Marla Clause 9F originates from an outdated founder's doc. It was superseded in the 2013 comp restructure. Legal has reviewed and deemed it unenforceable. We are not processing this request. Best, Brent Best. That smug little closer after dismissing a $25 million contract. He looked at that clause and treated it like a broken calendar invite. I didn't reply. Brent treats people like spreadsheets, click to close, forget they existed. But here's what he didn't know. I never signed the 2013 restructure. They sent it. I reviewed it. And I returned it with a one-note comment founder status retained. Original agreement remains active. They filed it. They acknowledged it. And now their legal team was about to trip over the truth. Enter Madeline Lopez Jr., associate, fresh from Northwestern. She replied to Brent's thread, CCing me, probably by mistake. Hi, all I located a notarized copy of the 1996 Founders Agreement. Marla Raines's signature is present. I see no documented override or formal rescission in later comp files. Still reviewing enforceability. Will follow up. Monsieur Lopez. Still reviewing. The sound of cracks forming. By lunch, Zoe pinged me on Slack. Hey, can you reword the mission statement? Still feels kinda boomer. I sent a thumbs up emoji. Meanwhile, I'd already started building a folder. Enforce, Clause 9F, scans, emails, meeting minutes, time-stamped rejections. They wanted to pretend Clause 9F didn't exist. Fine. I'd help them remember. I'd give them a map. By late afternoon, the air had shifted just barely. You wouldn't notice unless you knew how to read silence. But Brent kept glancing at his phone like it was trying to ruin his day. Zoe's urgent second meeting quietly canceled. And Madeline, no reply. but someone in legal suddenly requested access to the legacy HR archive. That drive hadn't been touched in over a decade. I knew because I built it. I wrapped up the day like always, reviewed 2 vendor contracts, approved purchase orders for the San Diego rollout, scheduled next week's QBR with ops. No one noticed the steel in my spine, the glint in my eye, because when people think you're harmless, they never see the spark beneath the surface. I didn't want war, didn't need revenge. I wanted what was mine. If Brent and the board wanted to feign ignorance, I'd let the truth scream louder than I ever could. 3 days passed. Not a single read receipt. Not a ping from legal, Brent silent. HR pretending the pension freeze was a transitional cost initiative, like I wouldn't notice my future vanishing over coffee. Legal was doing what legal does, stalling behind NDAs, hoping I'd give up or age out. They didn't realize the kind of silence they'd bought. I didn't shout. I didn't demand. If you want to know what happened when the board finally called me back, well, you know where the subscribe button is. I documented every delay, every thread, every evasive line. Enforce Clause 9F was now color-coded, indexed, mirrored across 2 encrypted backups in a private cloud I'd been paying for since the Yahoo era. Nothing flashy, just surgical preparation. Then came the tremors. Vendor reps canceled meetings. One of them, Mitch, who I've known since fax machines screamed like banshees, left me a voicemail. He'd heard rumors. Reassessing exposure, he said. Mitch doesn't say exposure unless he smells fire. And Holden Systems was starting to smolder. That night, 7:42 p.m., I was CC'd again, probably by accident. Madeline Lopez, subject Clause 9F, verification follow-up. Her email, Marla Rains' signature, is present not only on the founder's agreement, but also in the original bylaws. No override located in digital or physical archives. Clause 9F stands. And now, so did I. No board amendment rescinds the clause. And her rejection of the 2013 comp package is acknowledged and time-stamped in legal's inbox. Clause is active. Clause 9F was active. That confirmation landed like a siren, but only behind closed doors. For me, it wasn't news. I knew it was active the moment I pulled that dusty binder down from above the fridge. But now they knew. And the longer they stayed silent, the more radioactive it became. I started building the final dossier. Not for court, not yet, just preparedness. Board minutes from the 1996 approval meeting check. Original offer letter from May 1992 check. The email thread rejecting the 2013 package check. Notarized physical copy of Clause 9F with matching signatures from internal records check. Even a scanned photo of the local newspaper article, Holden Systems secures Series A. Founders. Marla Rains and Thomas Delgado lead the charge. My name was inked on record long before most of the current execs had even finished undergrad. I saved it all to an encrypted drive and printed a hard copy binder just in case someone got clever and tried to accidentally wipe a folder again. This wasn't paranoia, it was protocol. You don't survive 3 recessions, 2 buyout attempts, and 25 years of Silicon Valley posturing without learning to expect cowardice wrapped in a designer hoodie. Meanwhile, on the surface, everything looked normal. Zoe was still tossing out synergy jargon like she had a quota. Brent sipped some kale-flavored disaster and called it a reset. But if you listened, really listened, you could hear it. The tightening. An EA whispering near the elevators. A board audit meeting rescheduled with no explanation. Restricted access on shared drives. Surprise. Messages from half the directors who pushed the pension freeze. None of them said a word to me, but I felt it, their eyes, the nervous sidelong glances. Not anger, not guilt, fear. They thought they were playing defense. They didn't realize I'd stopped playing weeks ago. I was aligning dominoes. And gravity. It was on my side. The call was supposed to be routine, a polished investor, briefing all smiles and spin. I joined in mute camera off. Name label, M. Rains. The kind of voice that made you want to throw a stapler through a window. We've identified and resolved a minor contractual inquiry regarding a legacy executive agreement, Brent said. Minor, like a paper cut. No material risk, he added. Issue has been internally addressed. Internally addressed. That was rich, especially considering no one had sent me so much as a calendar invite, not even a form response to the activation notice. But then came the spin. Our liabilities remain well within projection. The leadership team is committed to fiscal clarity and minimal disruption during this transitional optimization phase. They were tiptoeing across a minefield in tap shoes. Every word smelled like someone trying to outrun a clause they never even bothered to read. I didn't speak, didn't react. Just noted the timestamp, saved the recording, and closed the call. 12 hours later, Charles rang. His voice was clipped, unusually tight. Marla, you're going to want to see what just came in. It was a whistleblower leak, funneled through his firm's encrypted portal. No files, just a screenshot. An internal email. Halden Systems Legal Review. Subject Reclause. 9F. From B. Collins. Clause 9F? Let her push it. She's too old to fight this in court. We stall her out. She'll cave. Or croak. Either way, we win. I stared at the line until it blurred. Too old to fight this. I've been called a lot over the years. Strategic, stoic, unshakable, but never obsolete. They tried to turn 3 decades of service into an expiration date. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. But something inside me shifted permanently. I opened Outlook and began typing to bordyhaldentech.com. Subject clause, 9F. Whistleblower. Evidence attached. Dear Board, please find attached a screenshot of internal communication from your CFO submitted via whistleblower protocol. This message reveals knowledge of Clause 9F's enforceability and an intentional effort to obstruct lawful payout on the basis of my age. And I wasn't done yet. Not even close. Audit represents not only a breach of internal ethical standards, but a deliberate attempt to obstruct a binding legal obligation through age-based discrimination. Please confirm wire transfer instructions and payout timeline by Friday 5:00 p.m. Failure to respond will result in the immediate filing of injunctive relief interest, accrual activation, and notification of your banking institution and corporate compliance officer. Regards, Marla Raines, founding partner, Halden Systems, Inc. I hit send. This wasn't negotiation anymore. It wasn't diplomacy. It was enforcement. By Thursday, Brent had cleared his calendar. Legal stopped replying to anything, even boilerplate vendor notices. The finance Slack channels ghost towns. One director's assistant emailed me to ask if I'd be attending next quarter's strategy offsite. I responded with one line: that will depend entirely on your compliance with your own bylaws. They weren't ignoring me anymore. They were afraid of me. Good. Let them shuffle through meetings whispering legal hypotheticals that all end the same way, with my name on a 7-figure wire transfer. I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't bargaining. I was boiling quiet and precise. By Friday morning, the edges of their corporate tower began to foam. I knew they'd hit crisis mode when even the legal stallers stopped sending "we're reviewing" emails. No responses, no acknowledgments. In legalese, that's panic sweat, the kind that soaks suits and gets billed at $900 an hour. Brent vanished. No Slack pings, no calendar entries, no building access logs. It was like someone yanked him mid-meeting and locked him in a conference room with 2 crisis managers and a stack of NDAs. They'd escalated to a firm out of New York, the kind that treats whistleblowers as data leaks and sees litigation as a brand strategy. But even they couldn't spin their way out of Clause 9F. It was too specific, too tight. No wiggle room, no arbitration, no committee review. It simply was. An axe tied to a tripwire, and they had tripped it. Blindfolded, drunk on budget cuts. Their first reply came bloated, legalese stuffed, and soaked in desperation. But it was already too late. We dispute the material applicability of Clause 9F and assert that its invocation lacks contemporaneous justification. I didn't even finish reading the email. Charles did. His reply was only 5 words: injunction request filed. Clock running. By that afternoon, our internal server logs were under subpoena. Every HR memo legal draft, Slack thread with the words, freeze retire, or too old flagged and swept into a compliance vault faster than Brent could clear his browser history. Cost-cutting had become untouchable, like saying Voldemort at Hogwarts. Entire fiscal decks were scrubbed and rewritten just to avoid triggering protocol flags. Then came the investors. I was cornered in the elevator by Harold Stinson, a legacy fund partner with bad ties and a handshake like damp concrete. "Marla," he said, clearing his throat like someone about to confess to something ugly. "Is it true what I'm hearing?" "About a clause. A penalty?" I didn't blink, just tilted my head and offered the kind of smile you give someone who already knows the answer. He stared for a beat too long, then quietly stepped off on the executive floor. Bold money moves fast when it smells smoke. Meanwhile, Brent launched one last Hail Mary, filed a motion to have the clause reviewed under good faith negotiation rules. A stall tactic dressed as diplomacy. If they could convince the court I was acting in bad faith, they might delay payout into arbitration. Charles filed the injunction before Brent's motion was even processed. The court's response came quickly and clean denied. Clause active, payment required, interest now accruing. The dominoes didn't just fall, they roared. I didn't pop champagne or text anyone. Instead, I logged quietly into the admin dashboard, still accessible thanks to a permission tree no one thought to revoke. Brent's calendar showed a new meeting emergency compliance review. 30 minutes blocked, no guests listed. One attachment contingency wire scenarios. They weren't planning an escape anymore. They were planning a survival strategy. And me, I was still. Utterly still. Not warning them this time, just watching. Let them fall. No fireworks, no grand apology. Just silence, where a wire transfer should have been. 12:01 p.m. My phone didn't buzz. 12:17, my bank app showed nothing new. By 12:30, it was over. The window had closed. 72 business hours from formal notice as outlined in Clause 9F. They'd missed it. Whether by arrogance, panic, or straight-up negligence, they let the clock run out. And with it, they triggered the second paragraph of the clause, the part no one in the current leadership had bothered to read. Interest accrual 3.2% per business day. Automatic escalation to default status. Notifications to third-party fiduciaries. Banking partners alerted. Insurance compliance flags activated. The best part, Charles didn't even have to follow up. The protocol executed automatically the moment the deadline passed. At 1:04 p.m., he forwarded me the notice legal default. Clause 9F Enforcement Part 2. Recipients, Halden. Legal Treasury Compliance, External Counsel. As of COB, today, Halden Systems is in legal default of Clause 9F per the founder agreement of Ms. Marla Raines. The designated payment window has expired without wire confirmation or approved extension. As such, all contractual penalties are now in effect, including compound interest, fiduciary escalation, and immediate creditor notification. Simple. Clinical. Devastating. By 2:00 p.m., the ripple hit. Not an audible scream, but the kind that moves through a building, missed meetings, frantic DMs, badge access failures. The kind of chaos that has its own frequency. At 3:15 p.m., CFO Brent Collins resigned. The company-wide message was predictable. After careful consideration and with deep gratitude, we announced the departure of Brent Collins, who is stepping away for personal reasons. Brent leaves behind a legacy of innovation and growth. Legacy of growth. Cute. He left behind a crater where our liquidity used to be. Slack went quiet. Compliance began restricting document access. IT started locking down cloud drives like a digital quarantine. From my kitchen window, it was just another calm, Arizona afternoon. Birds at the feeder, a squeaky lawnmower 2 houses down, and 30 floors up. Halden Systems was hemorrhaging itself to death above a salad bar. I didn't feel vindicated. Not yet. But I felt still. That strange stillness after a storm flattens the air when the silence is heavier than the noise. Later that afternoon, Charles sent me a single text. "They've started calling the banks." I didn't reply. Just kept stirring my tea. Slow, deliberate circles as if each rotation wiped away a decade of erasure. Every time they talked over me in meetings, every time they handed my strategy to someone shinier, every time they asked if I'd considered retiring to make room for fresh energy, as if I hadn't spent 30 years stabilizing their chaos, they called it cost-cutting. I called it compound interest. The fire didn't begin with a bang. It began with a number. On Monday morning, Halden Systems' $80 million line of credit froze, quietly. No warning, no email, just a clause deep inside their lending agreement. Any internal contract breach exceeding $10 million triggers. Automatic risk reassessment. Clause 9F payout $25 million. Breach confirmed. By noon, payments slowed. Vendor invoices bounced. Payroll approvals stalled. A routine ACH transfer got flagged transaction unavailable. Word spread fast. Inside locked offices, panic grew legs. By 2:00 p.m., the board was in emergency session. I knew because 3 directors canceled back-to-back investor calls, each citing urgent strategic realignment. Translation: they were scrambling to explain how a contract from the pre-Google era just torched their forecast. By Tuesday, the headlines landed. Business Insider founding clause. Costs Halden. Systems. 25 main users. Bloomberg pension. Freeze Sparks. Legal meltdown. Reuters hidden clause. Visible consequences. But my favorite was from a small tech blog, Rains Didn't Yell. She just collected. Requests poured in 6 journalists, 3 podcasts, 1 finance YouTuber offering a dramatic reading of the clause. I declined. All of them. My only public statement was issued through Charles in 12-point Times New Roman on a plain, white PDF. I did not sue. I did not threaten. I enforced what they agreed to. Marla Rains, founding partner, Halden Systems. I enforced what they agreed to. Marla Rains, nothing more. Because the truth doesn't need decoration. By Wednesday, Halden Systems stock slid like oil across polished tile, down 18% in just 5 trading days. The board tried to plug the leak with a PR patch, operational recalibration, and temporary resource consolidation. Translation: layoffs. 57 employees got the call that week. Some of them I knew. Good people. Quiet workers. The ones who kept the lights on while executives played musical chairs with efficiency initiatives. They didn't deserve it. But that's the nature of corporate combustion. It burns indiscriminately, even the ones holding the fire extinguisher. They didn't name me in the memos, but every hallway whisper that was mine. Marla's clause. Marla's penalty. Marla's bomb. I wasn't gloating. This wasn't vengeance. No champagne, no fist pump. Just stillness. That deep, cavernous kind that settles after a backdraft has pulled all the oxygen out of the room, leaving only silence and ash. I spent the week doing normal things. Grocery shopping, watering my ferns, fixing the faucet the building's super kept promising to get to. The world spun on. Kids laughed outside. Dogs barked in yards. Mail still came. And somewhere 30 floors above a salad bar, Halden Systems trembled under the weight of its own arrogance. At night, I sat by the window. No TV, just the soft creak of a rocking chair and a leather-bound notebook in my lap. On one page, I wrote, they wanted me silent. I gave them compliance. They wanted legacy without liability, history without memory, a spine without a voice. They got a lesson in remembering. In the ledger, it still wasn't done. Monday, 9:06 a.m. The deposit landed like a whisper earthquake in my banking app. One line buried in routine incoming wire. $25,000 Trin Basler Ref Clause 9F settlement. No message, no calls, just digits. By 911, Charles confirmed it cleared. And then some. A few minutes later, the new CFO, Jeremy Hartwell, an internal puppet who sat 2 rungs below Brent, sent me a thin apology. Subject wire confirmation and formal apology on behalf of Halden Systems. Dear Ms. Rains, please accept this confirmation of the full severance payout in accordance with Clause 9F of your founder's agreement, including accrued interest and legal fees as stipulated. On behalf of Halden Systems, I sincerely regret the oversight and the circumstances that brought us to this point. Your contributions to the company's foundation are immeasurable. Warm regards, Jeremy L. Hartwell, Chief Financial Officer, Acting. They always reach for warmth once the wire clears. I didn't respond. What was there to say? My signature was already coded into the bones of that company, its infrastructure, its early source files, its crisis plans, and the policy manuals they rebranded but never rewrote. I was Halden Systems. They just forgot until it cost them everything. That afternoon, I packed a small duffel bag, my notebook, and a thermos of black tea. I didn't tell anyone. Just drove 6 hours north to a lake cabin I'd bought quietly years ago. No Wi-Fi, no inbox, no headlines. I lit the fireplace, then stepped out onto the deck. The wind cut clean across the water, slapping the corners of my face like memory. The lake shimmered glass and shadow. In my lap, a worn leather notebook. I'd started it after the first HR meeting where I realized they'd stopped seeing me. Stamped on the front in faded gold, lessons they forgot. I flipped through old pages, observations, quiet warnings, clipped boardroom quotes, names circled in red. Every VP who mistook my silence for surrender. On the last page, I wrote, "They built the company on my back. I left with what I was owed. No more, no less." I closed the notebook. The storm was over. And they would remember me not because I torched the place, but because I never had to raise my voice to make the walls collapse. If you've ever been dismissed, underestimated, or quietly erased, I hope my story reminded you power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it signs contracts, builds empires, and waits. If you felt something along the way, drop me a comment below. I read them all. Tell me where you've stood tall in silence. And if you take one thing with you, let it be this: keep your receipts, know your worth, and never mistake being quiet for being weak. Hit that like button if you stood with me and subscribe, because I've got more lessons corporate forgot, and I'm just getting started.